outside today because I have a daughter who's going to wake up from her nap at any minute, and the first thing she's going to want is mommy. So bear with me, everybody. So the storytelling series was created by the nonprofit partnership to connect with nonprofit leaders during the COVID-19 pandemic and to see how organizations and the people in them were navigating their new realities, including sometimes taking interviews outside. So over the last few months, we've also seen major demonstrations across the US and throughout the world in affirmation of Black lives and against police brutality. So Chris, thank you for agreeing to do this interview with me today.
My pleasure.
Yeah, and to start out, will you share a little bit about yourself and the work that Mental Health America of Los Angeles does?
Sure. My training is as a clinical psychologist. And for the last about 25 years, everything I've done has been in the field of mental health, in different settings, in university settings, mental health care settings, medical, and the last 12 years has been in the nonprofit environment. The area that I always go back to, and I think is at the core of what I care the most about, is really serving people who are disenfranchised and have multiple challenges that they're trying to cope with, and are also where it's overlaid with poverty as well. Mm-hmm. And the work I've done in the last 15 years has been really focused on the intersection of medical care and mental health care, and trying to integrate all the things that someone needs to be healthy. Mm. What attracted me to MHALA is that they had long had a model that was very integrated. And so that's, if I had to describe MHALA in a word, it's, or in a sentence, it's about really meeting people where their needs are, but with a whole array of services. So there aren't barriers you can bring. It's kind of like a one-stop shop. Mm-hmm. When people have mental health challenges, they may have housing needs, they might be homeless, they may need a job, they may need to learn certain wellness and coping skills. There's a huge range of what we try to do. That's what attracted me to the agency, and that's the direction that we're going in right now. We have a lot of exciting new things we're doing.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've followed MHALA probably since I moved to Long Beach about 12 years ago, and I've always appreciated the organization's focus and, just approach to working with people who are experiencing challenges connected to their mental health, and just the way that the voice and experiences of people who are experiencing that are really centered in MHALA too. And yeah, just recently too, in the last few years, getting to serve on the task force around homelessness with you. And, I just really appreciate what you're bringing to the work too.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, so we're in this wild time. What shifts has MHALA had to make in light of COVID-19, and how are you navigating those shifts?
Well, it's going well, despite everything. I know it's a challenging time for everyone, and I really mean everyone. One of the things that we had been starting to do, not because we knew we were going to need to do this, it was sort of lucky that we'd already started it, was to really amp up our technology. Everyone on our staff has an iPhone. We were getting to the point where we were trying to get as many people as possible equipped with laptops, because a lot of our work is in the field. We go to where we need to meet people. And so when this hit, one of the first things I wanted to do was to make sure every single person we were serving, and we serve over 9,000 a year, so that's a lot of people. And I had this massive meeting with our 30 we're a 400 staff agency. I got our 30 people who are directors or above together, I think it was the middle of March. And I said, we've got to make sure we have phone numbers or a way to reach every single person we're serving. So we quickly did that, and we very quickly shifted to new ways of communicating. A lot of it is by cell phone, because not all the people we serve have a computer. More and more There's telehealth and working with them using a computer. But there's a broad range in terms of how we're working with people. For instance, we just launched, I'm really happy about this. It's a street medicine team that's coordinating the triage for people who are living on the streets, and some have COVID. And so we're working with county agencies, with the city of Long Beach, really partnering with a lot of folks to make sure people get the care they need. But we've got staff who are in that position. They're suited up for protection. They're out on the street every day, interacting face to face, all the way to people who may have some kind of a condition that puts them in that vulnerable category. So they're working from home, and then a lot of other people are in the middle. We've really worked hard to keep everybody safe. I feel we've done a good job of that. I'm really happy about that. But we have not had to close down any services. We're still doing everything we did before. We're doing it in a different way. We had to very quickly add on food services because we found that we had a lot of people who were food insecure and they're getting really hungry. We're serving, for example, some older people who we had helped get into housing, and they had trouble opening cans, and we needed to look for solutions to make sure people's basic needs were met. And so we've grown this new food program that we didn't have before. But basically, we're doing everything we did before, which includes getting people housed, getting them settled into housing, providing mental health services, medical care. We have about 20 nurses on our staff, and then connecting them to more medical care that they need. Dealing with employment, although right now, given the economy, it's the kinds of jobs we can find people are limited. One of the things we're doing is we've started a program to help our members, we call our clients members, to really help them learn how to use technology, because that's a way they could get a job right now, or they could look for a job. So we're providing a lot of skills that as the economy opens up more, they'll be able to use. We also provide educational resources, financial resources. So we're still providing all that, but it's all over the place. I think it's going well. I think it's a challenge. The biggest challenge I think we face, and the thing that worries me a lot about the staff, is that people are more isolated, and that's very stressful. So we've done a lot of things to bring the staff together to help them talk to each other, so they have the support they need to do this kind of work. But it's going well in terms of the COVID part so far. I think everyone wants things to change tomorrow, but they're not. So.
For sure. Well, it sounds like you've done a really good job of adapting, meeting people where they're at, figuring out what technology is going to serve folks, just helping kind of even your team, like, okay, who can be out, who needs to be at home, and just how to meet the needs, as well as what you're saying about food insecurity. I think that's something that we're hearing a lot from folks. Even our organization, we've helped to coordinate some mutual aid efforts around getting food, diapers, early childhood education supplies to families. And we're not a direct service organization, but there's just such a big need right now.
Huge.
Yeah.
Huge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I can see you really meeting the moment, I guess, is one thing that we've been saying a lot, but it sounds like you're doing that. And so, you talked a little bit about what folks are facing in terms of that isolation, and also so important that you're providing that space too for your team to process and get support with one another. But what are some of the other things that, people are really facing in terms of, the members that you work with are facing in this time?
I think they, along with our whole population, are dealing with this increased anxiety of, are they going to have their housing? Are they going to have enough food? Are they going to be able to go where they need to go? There's a lot of fear about going outside. We do a lot of education to help them understand what's safe and how to interact safely. And we got them all masks in the beginning, and, just to really fortify them to handle all the things that come up. because the people we serve too are a broad range. It might be someone who's a young person in our TAPE program, Transition Age Youth Program, that's dealing with, maybe they've left home, they have a place to stay, but they're dealing with a lot of self-esteem issues and finding that a lot of their friends are having a lot of problems right now because of COVID. So it's like it really varies based on the program. But I think it's fair to say that everyone, probably people who are listening right now or who see this recording, are really stretched in terms of their mental health resources. It's a hard time. There's a lot of what I kind of call like a kind of existential depression that people feel about what's going on. And I think a big piece of that is what happened with following George Floyd's murder and everything that occurred after that. People they're not just suffering from feeling isolated and the economic hits of the pandemic, or even if it's affected them themselves and they've lost people or been exposed or gotten sick, but they're dealing with seeing the trauma that so many people in our society are dealing with and have been dealing with for such a long time. There's a lot of hope because of Black Lives Matter and because of where we're headed. But I think there's also a lot of trauma among our communities of color and among everybody who's been affected. And so that's overlaid. And I don't even think COVID is a separate thing. I think the people you see who are getting sick with the virus are people who didn't have the resources to really fortify them. And so they're more at risk for more complications. It's very similar and connected, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. There is those connections and just the inequities, throughout society that COVID, really magnified or just illustrated to those who weren't aware or weren't paying attention. And also, just with whether it's policing or housing or food, economics, those things are all connected. And I can see definitely as a mental health organization, that overlay of anxiety and
And for us, it's not new. I feel like our agency really lives at the intersection of social justice and mental and physical health care. Because we're serving, those people who've been disenfranchised for so long. And that's really key. Like 47% of the people we serve are Black Americans. 23% are Latinx. That's 70%. Another 10% are in other ethnic minorities. And so our work is with those people who've been really affected by a lack of access and a lot, the inequities that exist. And so we're seeing them as one problem and one issue that we need to work on addressing. But it's been a focus of our agency kind of since its beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. That intersection between social justice and physical and mental health. I'm curious, I know you have been working on it for a long time. It's been a focus of the agency, but have the conversations shifted at all during this time, or how are you thinking about, just how your organization is addressing these issues?
Well, one of the things we started, and we actually started this before COVID, our agency is well known for its recovery model that goes back a couple of decades. But there was a big focus on what do you need to do to get people feeling better in terms of their mental health needs and getting people housed. And the emphasis was on what do you need to be okay? And now we're looking at what does someone need? I know the word thrive has been used so much because of the Pfizer commercial. What do we need to do to really help people thrive and have really meaningful lives and really be connected to their communities, not just living in low-income housing because they have a voucher, but really working at their full capacity, feeling meaningfully engaged. So that's something we were looking at before, and now it's more important than ever. And we just got funding from the California Community Foundation to focus on recovery from trauma, especially focused with what's going on today, all the kinds of current traumas that have added to what people were already dealing with. And looking at groups that are especially in need with that. And so we're designing an app that anyone, anywhere can use. It's going to take some time to get it up and running and living on our website. And then we want to have workshops and things, and when things open up more in the community. And the goal is, people tend to think of mental health as therapy. That I know when I graduated and got trained, it was like, well, aren't you going to get an office and sit there and talk to people for an hour? And that model, even though it has value in a lot of ways, it doesn't address the vast amount of problems that people have connected to their mental health. Anyone can have what we call a mental health challenge. They can be, they can be doing fine, and then things happen and there's a tipping point where it starts to become really problematic. So we're looking at what skills and what kind of core resiliencies do we need to help them get in order to bounce back from what they've been through and to fortify them about whatever is coming down the road. And that's kind of our new core direction, that we're just doing the branding for it, and we've got customers working on it. We're really excited about it.
That's awesome. And it's so important, that also the connections that people have with others, and hearing that they're not alone, can also really be therapeutic, I think, for folks too, and healing.
Oh, yeah.
That's great. So right now we're, with the uprisings, there is a call, to divest resources, to shift resources away from policing, and to really invest more, have our communities, our budgets invest more in the core services and resources that would support our community. What would that look like for the members that you work with?
I think that I don't think it would look any different for our members than for the rest of the population. I think it would have a big impact because the majority of the people we serve are people of color, and the very vast, it's not the majority, but the largest percentage group that we serve are people who are Black. And they are the most affected by things that have happened with the police. So I think it can only have a positive impact. I think that there's a need. I'm involved in various task force at a state level and a county level to look at how do we bring everyone together so that we can look at what are the needs, how are we going to fund this, how can we help, how do we work in partnership with police systems. It's going to take some time. And so I think we're your agency, our agency, it's a very big deal. What's really encouraging is that people are finally looking at it. And there's a recognition that this really needs to happen. That a lot of the issues that police are sort of stepping into are social service issues.
Right.
And it's affecting people who are in the Black community disproportionately, and people of color.
Absolutely. So you talked a little bit about some hope that you see. I'm curious, if you could just share what, if any, glimmers of hope do you see coming out of this time?
I feel, for me, like when I saw, like I actually wanted to be involved in the demonstrations. I had asthma years ago, so I'm playing it safe, and I didn't want to be in a crowd. But I actually participated in a driving caravan.
The car caravan, yeah.
And I am incredibly inspired by the generation, and most of them are younger, but it's not just people who are youthful. It cuts across every ethnic group and age group that have really stepped up and want to bring about justice right now and recognition of what's happening. And I think that's inspiring. I think it's inspiring that there's a commitment, that it's being talked about. The police departments are listening, that legislators are listening, that officials are. That's the part that makes me hopeful, even though it's a time it's a time when people can get upset about the bigger picture and what's going on, but it's a very rare time.
Yeah, absolutely. Just kind of seeing all of this energy and momentum, like you said, it would be hard for me to believe that there would be people talking about defunding the police or like shifting resources in the way that folks are right now. And I think it is important to look for that hopefulness too. The other thing that just stood out to me is like the accessibility of protests. I mean, for even pre-coronavirus, not everyone could get out physically to a protest. And so it's interesting to see like caravans emerge, or just more people talking about, you know, how social justice can be accessible to folks with, you know, all sorts of kind of abilities, and, you know, where there might be different restrictions. So.
Yeah, I think that there are many people in the country who supported what was going on, but because of COVID, they felt like they couldn't support it in the way they wanted to. And I think I think when we look back at this time and the protests and what went on and the demonstrations and the impact that it's been having, I think there's going to be a very favorable look at it. I mean, I know there were, and I don't condone violence in any form, and I know things have gotten out of hands in some places, but I think that the fact that people are standing up and want to have their voices heard, and that's traditionally in our country the way that peaceful protests are a way to have your voice heard about what's gone on. I think that is having a very hopeful impact on people.
Absolutely. And even, you know, an understanding of when there is like destruction of property or whatnot, you know, how that is born out of a frustration, a denial of basic resources as well. Yeah. So, you know, it's a hopeful time and it's a heavy time. What are you doing to take care of yourself during this time?
The thing that I actually live on the bay, near the bay, and water has always, I'm looking out the window right now, water is always the thing that brings me a lot of peace. I try to spend a lot of time doing things with my family, spending time with my dog, very simple things, taking walks. I think you really have to unplug at a certain point, even if it's later at night, and find a way to relax. And if it's watching mindless TV, because I can't watch one more news show.
Right.
And I say that to my staff, and we're trying to help our members find ways to really deal with their own stress. And it's really important because it's such a stressful time, and people are worried, and they're worried for good reason about so many different things, about their livelihood, about what's going to happen in the country, and about their physical health. And
absolutely,
it's very stressful.
Yeah.
But it's also a hopeful time. I mean, I think we will get out past eventually the COVID part of it. And hopefully we'll be able to look back and say, okay, what can we take from this, from the protests, from everything that's gone on, that can lead to something really positive.
Yeah, there's a lot of potential for transformation.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So as we wrap up our interview, how can people get involved in and support Mental Health of America of Los Angeles's work?
Well, we, first of all, people can donate anytime if they go to mhala.org. We also we're in the process of launching and broadening our volunteer program. it's likely to take off more when we can do more in-person things. But if they go to our website, they can see ways that they can get connected, contact us to volunteer and help.
Okay, awesome. And is there anything else that you'd like to share before we wrap up today?
No, I appreciate the opportunity to share this with you.
Awesome.
Appreciate what you and your agency are doing during this time.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I've always appreciated your work, and it was nice talking with you today.
Okay, take care.
All right, you too.